Welcome to season 2 of the Bigger Than You podcast, your go-to weekly podcast that blends energetics and mindset to help you do whatever it takes to bring your vision to life, whilst having fun on the way. I'm Jenna Holloway, your host and multi-award-winning intuitive hypnotherapist and mindset coach. My purpose is to help mission-led business owners and visionaries who want to inspire change by leading the way in a space that otherwise may feel unnerving and too difficult. This is Bigger Than You. Hello, welcome back. Thank you so much for coming back. If you are new, welcome to the podcast. I'm joined by an amazing woman, Serena. I cannot wait for us to get into a conversation. First of all, Serena, can you introduce yourself to our lovely listeners?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me at this very special podcast. I'm Serena. I am the founder of the PostPartum Doctor, which was the business that I created when I was 3 months postpartum. And, it's interesting because you wouldn't think that after you have a baby, well, certainly in the period right before, the immediate period after you have a baby, you're definitely very nested and cocooned, but something definitely changes. I don't know if you experienced this when you had your girls, where around 3 months postpartum, you start to really look at your life and you're like, you know what am I available for? What do I want to be doing? How do I want to be spending my time? And so the actual medical term for this is called matrescence. It's really like when your mind is shifting. And at that time, I just burned down a lot of the things that I had spent a decade building. These are things that up until that day were like my dream career and I had spent years in school for. And I remember when I was breastfeeding my son like all day long and just really in my stillness, in my slowness, I daydreamed a lot. And there's so much power of daydreaming. And I daydreamed of a business that would allow me to be flexible with my time, that would be built on joy, and that would provide for my family, and that I could do from Italy because that's where I'm from. And so that was really the birth of my business, the PostPartum Doctor.
That's amazing. And I never really realized that it was a scientific thing where so it's like you kind of reflect on your life now that you have a child and reflect and make changes. I can completely relate to that. Growing up, I always felt like I wanted to have a business one day, but at the same time, I went into teaching and felt like I was going to be in teaching forever. And so I didn't really ever know how that dream of owning a business would ever come to fruition. And then it's exactly like you said, I had my girls and realized I just had this revelation that actually this dream career that I put everything into, I just realized suddenly wasn't the right fit. And one thing led to another, and here I am with a business too. So that's really cool to actually know that it's a thing in the brain.
Yeah. And I think to that point, one of the things that like for my generation and your generation and our parents' generation, certainly, we were brought up with the notion of like, you work towards a job, an identity, that's who you become, and that's who you stay for life. And when I shifted to my business, as much as I love my business, it is my dream. I love all my clients. I'm also very aware that this is probably not what I'm going to be doing in 5 years or 10 years and 15 years. And that piece doesn't scare me. Like I still daydream, right? And, just the other day I was talking to my husband. I'm like, I want to open up a bodega for postpartum products, and so that's the amazing thing about building a business is that you prove to yourself that you can daydream and then make it tangible, right? And it's freeing.
Absolutely. And to have that abundance mindset where you're like, oh, I can create that if I want to. And to have that flexibility to not feel tied down to what you're doing here and now, that actually you can create what you want to create. And I know that like we haven't said this to the listeners yet, but I know that you're very on my wavelength in terms of energy, living life in alignment. And just living life being in alignment is doing the things that you want, that things that are on your heart, isn't it?
Yeah. And I know this is exactly what you teach, but the big light bulb moment for me was realizing that I could not outperform my subconscious identity. I spent my 20s hustling and grinding, being the top student, doing all the work, doing all the volunteering, like doing it all, and yet not feeling happy. It's not that I wasn't happy, not feeling like it was ever enough, not feeling like I was ever enough.
Yeah.
So there was happiness in my life, but there was a lot of, I'm still not where I need to be. I still need to be hustling more. And what I mean by you can't outperform your subconscious identity is that if your subconscious identity is saying you're not safe, you're not enough, it doesn't matter how much you hustle, you won't find that peace, right? And so my motto this past few years has been like, work less and rest more, which is very difficult for somebody who spent her 20s just on, well, essentially it was trauma drive, right?
Yeah, I had it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's the opposite of what most people believe and the way most people live their life. So, but it is the better way, isn't it? Can you talk to us about your experience of the benefits of working less? I can't remember the exact phrase you used.
Yeah, working less and resting more. Yeah.
How have you created more abundance from doing that?
Yeah. Well, besides the fact that my best ideas have come in rest, one of the things that I noticed in my 20s, I never had silence in my life. I woke up, put my headphones on, would listen to music or a podcast the entire way to work. Then I'd be really stimulated with patients all day at work. Then I'd get up during my lunch break, headphones in my ear. After work, headphones back in my ear, take the subway back, home, TV on, friends talking. Like I would have music on in the shower. There was just never silence in my life. And when you don't make the space for your next level you to come through, you miss that opportunity, because how is the next level you going to talk to you? How are you going to get your intuitive nudges if you don't have silence in your life? So now I wash my dishes in complete silence. I drive in complete silence. And that has really helped me have a lot of like intuitive nudges and inspired actions, or just relax my brain, right? Because, when we work with clients, and I know you can very much identify with this, but we give everything to our clients. Like there's not a mountain I wouldn't climb for my clients. It's hard work, right? We hear a lot, we hold a lot for our clients. And so I realized that I was never going to be the mentor I could be if I didn't have the silence to give my brain a break.
Yeah, that's so good. And it's just dropped in for me that I just sort of intuitively live in alignment because I know when something doesn't feel right. So my ego brain is aware of the podcasts that I want to listen to. But do I ever listen to them? No, because I drive, unless there's a song that I absolutely love on, I will whack the volume up in the car and sing. If I don't love the song, I'll turn it off. Like I'm not going to sit and listen to something that doesn't light me up, or sit and listen to a bunch of admin. I will drive a really far distance with that. Well, not far, actually. What we consider far is like half an hour. I know that's not the same in America, but I will drive half an hour in silence, or like same as you, I will wash the dishes in silence. And I know that creates the space, isn't it? And it's so you're right. It cannot come through unless we leave that space for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the second piece to that, I would say, is one of the things that I learned was a misaligned choice is misaligned for everyone. Yeah. So while I was making choices to please my parents, to please society, to please what social media thought, etc., right? I realized that actually that doesn't benefit anyone, that my parents and society and my social media followers would feel more positivity, more productivity, more happiness for me if I was just making my aligned choices.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest shift, right? Because there's a lot of, well, what will people think? It's funny because a lot of that, I mean, you could probably speak to this more than I could, but a lot of that, what would people think, is completely constructed in our mind, not real life. And what I've learned, again, when you are in alignment, when you are making an aligned choice, and that also means saying no sometimes, it's beneficial for everyone involved because they know they are getting your most aligned self.
Yeah, 100%. And there's just no resistance, is there? When you're out of alignment, you create that resistance and it's just harder for everybody. Yeah. And also when you are making your aligned choices, you are an inspiration to everyone around you.
Yeah.
You're the light that people look to, whether they know it or not, you are.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm drawn to watching your stories, for example, and that's because you're in alignment. Like it must be. You're calm. You're always so calm. And you never feel the silence, like you never say something unless you've got something to say. And that's just so perfect. Like there's so much noise on social media, and I know that you're not available for it yourself. Can I ask you a question?
By the way, that is such a compliment. Thank you so much. I really
you're welcome.
say how much I appreciate you saying that. But yes, you can ask me anything.
So, what kind of aligned choices do you make now that weren't a part of your reality last year?
That's a really great question. So I think the biggest answer to this is really thinking about what makes my soul happy. Like, what is my soul want to experience in this life, right? And I believe, and you might have heard me say this on my social media, but I believe that everybody has their soul calling, soul purpose. Some people say, our soul has chosen our body to execute what the soul wants to experience, right? And so when I have done that work, I stopped shaming myself, like, oh, why don't I have this already? Why does my bank account not look like this already? I'm like, well, maybe my soul wanted to experience having to build this on my own, right? Or maybe my soul wanted to experience scarcity so that I could learn safety. Maybe my soul needed to experience heartache so I could learn love, right? And so going back to, and I don't know that this is alignment per se, but well, I guess it is, right? People think that alignment means that everything feels good and you're just on this smooth path, but really alignment is painful by nature. It has to hurt because you're changing, right? And so alignment hurts because you are walking into the unknown, you're making scary choices, right? And so I would say that the biggest piece, just to give you a tangible example, is I walked away from a 6-figure corporate job that was the job of my dreams. My boss was family. She delivered my baby. She was one of 80 people at my wedding. I love her dearly. And there came a point in my career there where I was seeing patients every 10 minutes. And by the time I would walk into the room, sometimes it would be like 4 minutes I would have with them. And it was crushing. It was crushing my soul. And my soul was saying, I can't do this. Right. And having to walk away from that job that I spent a decade building was incredibly difficult. And I know it was painful at all of our ends. But the point is, I remember driving home with just such a huge smile on my last day of work because I learned what self-trust means, right? I learned that I could do this really scary thing and that everybody was going to be okay. My patients were going to be okay. My boss was going to be okay. And I was going to be okay. And that to me is alignment.
Yeah, 100%. What you said about it not being easy, alignment's not being easy. When we choose the easy way, we don't look at the growth. We go round it, don't we? And actually growth is uncomfortable by nature because you have to go through it to grow.
Yeah.
And then you get to the other side, or you get to the easy part because you've done the growing and you look back and you're just so proud. I bet you must be so proud of yourself for having the self-trust and the courage to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a really beautiful book called Signs by Laura Lynn Jackson. This book helped me a lot as well. It's how universe, God, angel spirits, whatever you want to call it, your menstrual cycle, like whatever you want to call it, but how it speaks to you and tells you what your aligned path is. The more and more you're able to listen to that, the more you cultivate it. Going back to silence, right? The more you honor those intuitive nudges, the more the body's like, oh, she's available for that. Let's send her more, right? And so that book was, I would say, my 2022 book of the year. For sure.
I'm going to read it. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. It was, I lost my mother last year as well. And it's also a very helpful book for anybody who's navigating loss in their life. And yeah, it's just a really beautiful, beautiful reminder that we co-create our life with something much greater than just ourselves. Right.
Yeah. I know you're probably going to bring this up about time, but you built your business in your baby's nap time. Like you've said at the top of the podcast, you didn't know that you wanted to have your own business until 3 months after your baby was born. So you built it during your baby's nap time. Can you talk to us about that?
one of the most important steps in manifesting is truly just deciding that this is going to happen. Like without a shadow of a doubt, like, okay, I'm going to start this business and it's going to become something. Once I made that decision, my first cohort of the Postpartum of Ease mentorship had 4 people. They were my 4 founding members. I love my founding members dearly. I will always remember them. So I had my 2 first paying clients. This is back in, when I started in 2020. And it was just amazing that people would pay for the Postpartum of Ease mentorship. And then I asked 2 of my friends to join the group too, so we could be a group of 4. That first group in many ways was probably some of the most powerful work I've done. There is a word which I will look up, but it's like the stamina of a beginner, like why beginners sometimes have like their best work because there's no fear in it.
Yeah.
I was all just like, I am here and I'm ready.
Yeah.
I didn't have a website. I didn't have a checkout page. I didn't have a portal. We would meet on Zoom. I would record it. Then I would email it to them. It was as simple as that.
Yeah.
It was very, very simple, but it was incredibly powerful. And it was just a start, right? And our mentor teaches this to us too. Like you don't have to have it all figured out to start.
Yeah.
You just have to be a few paces ahead of your clients, right? You just have to have like, what are we talking about this week? And yeah, that was very much how my business was born. And it's, in many ways, it was some of, like I said, the most powerful work because I was very authentic and just present and there and ready and super excited and motivated.
Amazing. That's so inspiring in many ways.
What's a lot next? Are your clients like starting a business or are they just scaling at this point when they
most of them are scaling, but actually not necessarily like, and especially the ones that have come to me since listening to this podcast, like the repetitive theme is like, do the inner work. And the sooner you can do the inner work, the easier and more joyful it is to create success with ease. And so, yeah, I'm getting more and more people earlier on in their business because they're like, yeah, why wait and struggle and be in hustle and like create success from a place of struggle. It doesn't have to be that way. So yeah.
And to that point, that was very much present in my mind because I was like, well, why would I have left a dream job to just create something that's hustle, right? Like that just makes if I want to hustle, I could literally pick up my phone right now and find a corporate job if I wanted to hustle.
Yeah.
Why put hustle into this business, right? That's why I was saying in the beginning, I wanted to build this business from joy. And so I love the fact that your clients work through that piece as they are building a business that only requires joy to be like the fuel that sustains it.
Yeah. And they're all on my wavelength and the same as you, how we create our reality. So if we are living life joyfully, then we're going to create a life full of more joy. And if we can celebrate our success, then we're going to have more reasons to celebrate and be grateful and positive and all those things. It's about being the version of yourself that you want to have more of, where your focus goes, your energy flows and, that whole constant co-creating thing. And aligned choices is at the root of it, isn't it? If every single choice you make is aligned, you're going to go faster. Just life is just going to be so much more joyful and embracing the growth that comes too, rather than being like scared of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And an easy way to start this is look at your home or your bedroom, like just funnel it down to the easiest thing. It doesn't have to be business decisions at first and practice your like, yes, please, no, thank you. Right. Like what in this room feels like, you know what? I don't want this anymore, right? Yeah. Or like, this feels like an absolute yes.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's also huge. It's not really business related, but I got to say, every time you bring something in your home, it's an energy that it's requiring of you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the more you can kind of preserve your energy, one of the things that I often say is whatever you're spending your time doing, you're perfecting, right? So if you're spending and this used to be me, I would not be able to work on my business until my house was clean. Well, you know what I was perfecting? Being a cleaner, like
Yeah.
doing a really good job washing my floors, right? When I stopped doing that, when I prioritized my business, I'd come upstairs to my office first thing in the morning and I would just ignore the fact that the beds weren't made and I would ignore the fact that there was dishes in this thing, focus on my business. Well, what ended up happening is the business grew. I had more money. We hired a house cleaner and my family was supported. We were eating healthier food, like all of these things because I prioritized what I really wanted to be doing.
Yeah.
Very counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
Because you could look at that decision and be like, well, that's pretty selfish that you just went right into your office and ignored your home. But I knew that this business would support my home more than I could.
Yeah. So it's making those your daily decisions with the next level version of yourself. What would my next level version of myself have a bunch of crap around on the bedroom floor? Absolutely not. So like, and what you said earlier about basically decluttering and the stuff that you do in your home and in your personal life, it matters. You cannot compartmentalize the energy that you spend in your business and the energy that you give in your personal life. It's all interlinked. So making those aligned choices, the things that are right for you, practice it on a really minor level in the sense that if the pair of socks that you're putting on in the morning annoy you, well, don't wear them anymore. Get rid. Anything that is not a hell yes, don't have it in your space. And I'm like working on constantly like choosing a little space in my house and like decluttering just a little bit here and there. And I'm chipping away and really making progress and it feels really good. And I know that everything's energy. And so the more stuff I have, the more I'm like subconscious. It's like noise, isn't it? It's noise that your subconscious mind is having to process all the time. Whereas if there's less stuff, you're not expending your energy in ways that you just don't want to.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And if you aren't sure who your next level self is or your higher version self is, because some of my clients ask, so I work with mothers, by the way, who've had babies and I support them in their postpartum. My work originally was a lot around like breastfeeding and newborn sleep and nutrition, but it has really transformed. The conversations I'm often having with my clients now are more about themselves because they realize that when they are their best versions, then they can do all of those things that I just listed a lot easier. So when my clients say, I have no idea who the version of mother I'm trying to be or my highest version because this is new, one of the things that I offer as an invitation is to think about somebody that you really admire. It can be a real person. It can be like a fictional person, and start spending a lot of time with them. This is why we are attracted to our mentors. This is why we invest in mentorship, right? Because yes, they teach us strategies, but we love to be in their energy. We love to be like, how does Jenna think? What would she do in this situation? What would she say about this, right? And the thing is, we all have different mentors we're attracted to because our mentors show us something that is already within us, right? Like they're just a little bit brighter than we are at the moment, but that's why we're so attracted to them because we're like, that's who I am.
Yeah.
And I need to brighten up the light here so I can step more into who I am.
Yeah.
And so, so I do a whole activity with like kind of thinking about the mother. And, it's funny, some of my clients, they think about actual mothers. Some of them think about, stories. Some of them think about like Mother Mary. Some of them think about Mother Teresa. Some of them think about, mothers in general, like Italian mother, whatever it is that you are aspiring to be, quote unquote, is usually what your soul, again, wants to experience anyway. It's who you are anyway.
Yes, I love that so much. And where you said about you're attracted to your mentor, that's so true because of the like attracts like, the energy that we are bringing the mentors that we want to work with. We're bringing them into our awareness because we wouldn't otherwise. Our energy is attracting the people into our life because that's co-creation. And we literally wouldn't be aware. They wouldn't be on our radar if they didn't spark something in us. So I love that. I've never heard that before. Thank you, Erin.
Somebody recently just asked me, what's the difference between what you do in therapy? I think mentorship is really going to grow. I think we're going to see so much growth in the mentorship space. But, at least in the United States, it's still like, well, does insurance cover this? Like, would you have a license for this? Like, what is the difference when you say you're a mentor than a therapist? And Well, I would love to hear your answer to this too, but essentially what I think of when I think of therapy, and by the way, some of my best friends are therapists. I have nothing but admiration for therapy. I think therapy is needed across the lifespan. I'm inspired by a lot of therapists. I follow a lot of therapist work. And the difference between therapy and mentorship is with therapy, you do not choose your therapist. Oftentimes in America, like you get assigned to a therapist who has availability and who takes your insurance. You maybe do a little like research on like where did they go to school, what do they specialize in, but you don't really form a relationship, right? Like I have relationships with my clients, which turn into the like, okay, we can build something together. And then with therapy, it's oftentimes a little bit longer of a process to explore, like, well, what was the root of this? Where do you think the root of this is? How does this feel in your body? Whereas I believe mentorship doesn't have to be that long.
Yeah.
Mentorship, I mean, when we are on our mentor's call, like sometimes doesn't she just like change our life in like one sentence? And you're like, whoa, that's everything I needed to hear. Done. Like that mind block is over, right? Yeah. And so I have conversations with my clients that sound like more coaching, if you will, right? Like more of like, well, here is what we know about how the mind works, how alignment works, how manifestation works. It's not that I'm necessarily telling them what to do, but I'm inviting them to think about how would it feel to do it this way instead, right? And that's kind of the difference between the therapist who waits for the client to kind of come to that on their own, whereas the mentor or the coach who's like, try this on for me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. And I guess it's like how I've evolved, you know, my training was in hypnotherapy and it's, it was solution focused, but it was hypnotherapy. And actually what I do now is so much more. And it's all evolved that through me making aligned choices and trusting myself to evolve my own process to a place where it is coaching and mentorship just as much as subconscious reprogramming. And it's that whole self-trust piece to just follow your own journey, not needing to know the big picture, just doing the one aligned choice at a time, and just trusting in the process and trusting in your journey and everything. It's so inspiring to have you on the podcast, Serena.
I just want to say I love your self-trust. I've watched you grow this past year, the way you show up to calls. You've always had self-trust. Every wave of your business, you've shown up as an expert, as a mentor, as a coach with an enormous amount of self-trust. And it's so inspiring to see. Some of us are like crying on the calls. Like, you just have this anchored self-trust and it's amazing. It's just amazing and so inspiring to see.
Oh, thank you. And likewise, I find you so inspiring too. And I think that's really come out today. So
thank you so much.
The listeners will love you.
This was such a joy. Thank you so much for this.
Absolute pleasure. I feel so privileged to have a podcast where I can invite guests on and just have such an interesting conversation. And oh, by the way, I'm just going to hit record and give this to the world too. It's such a privilege and really enjoy it. Yeah. So if the listeners want to be in your world, Serena, where can they find you?
Thank you. I'm at the PostPartum Doctor on Instagram, and my website is thepostpartumdoctor.com. So simple enough there. But slide into my DMs. I love connecting. I really love connecting with folks.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the Bigger Than You podcast with your host, Jenna Holloway. If this episode has been valuable to you, please share it with a friend or leave a review.